Please speak to the differences between the social changes happening in Egypt and Libya, one being largely nonviolent without a lot of outside interference, the other now being violent with outside interference.
This is going to prove to be a great study, no matter how the two situations play out, because of the way they've gotten started so differently. The uprising in Egypt, we now know that the opposition had no real expectation that it was going to result in this kind of change as quickly. We know from conversations that people have had with the young leaders of the opposition and others involved in the Tahrir Square demonstrations that they were looking at a long-term process of civil disobedience designed to impact the Egyptian politics, but no expectation that they were going to see the president of the country leave in 19 days. And it surprised them in such a manner that, in a sense, they were not organized as well for the post-Mubarak era as they were organizing for getting rid of Mubarak. And that's what makes this turn to constitutionalism so interesting. There could have been chaos in Egypt as opposition groups with very different agendas immediately might have started fighting over who gets the pieces of the pie that are going to be cut into as a result of this change. But the one thing that's unified them so far is a desire to see this thing through peacefully. Now, having said that, I don't want anyone to forget or ignore the critical role of the Egyptian military, which is running the country now, and which, as I said earlier, is going to be the ultimate arbiter of how much political space is opened up for the politics of the opposition to play out. And that, in the end, may prove to be determining. If the opposition looks like it's seeking to uproot a system that the military is comfortable with, we may see a backlash at some point. But for the time being, the combination of circumstances of this unifying role that the military has played in Egypt, where it stood above the fray during the 19 days of the uprising. It wanted to see Mubarak treated with dignity, but it also was very sensitive to what it was hearing in Tahrir Square. That's been quite critical in what looks like a peaceful transition. You take Libya, on the other hand, which does not have, in the first instance, as long a history of a unified political culture as Egypt. You know, for those of you who have visited Egypt, you know, there are layers upon layers of history. You can go back 10 times and not see the same era, let alone the same historical beauty of the country, whether it's Pharaonic or Islamic or Coptic or modern. Libya is a conglomeration of tribes in a situation in which Muammar Gaddafi, the leader for the last 30 plus years, has actively sought to prevent the institutionalization of politics. You remember the first thing that Gaddafi did was to get rid of the foreign ministry. Now, as a former diplomat, I take that personally. You know, that's jobs for my friends. But he did it on purpose. He was getting rid of institutions that could serve as a unifier of the society, because he wanted essentially there to be a leader on top who would have direct relationships with the various tribes who would not have relationships with each other. In other words, keeping Libya totally segmented so that the center, run by Gaddafi and his ilk, would be able to control the place. Once that center was attacked, you now see this basic division of the country into tribal warfare. There's one, I can't remember the name, but there's one of the major tribes in Libya, as of last Tuesday, I don't know what's happened since, has changed loyalty in this uprising 3 times. They were with Gaddafi for a few days, and then they switched against Gaddafi, and then they went back to Gaddafi, totally consistent with the politics of Libya. They simply want to be on the winning side, and there's no sense here of a larger societal good or a larger societal benefit that's coming out of this. So you've got 2 very different societies, you've got 2 very different institutional arrangements within the societies, And you have one in which the major institutional player, the military, is actually trying to control, in a positive way, we hope, the pace and direction of change, and the other where the military has taken sides in order to stop change from happening.